Are the soul and hell misunderstood? Welcome to Understanding God. Before continuing with what happened after Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, let's answer some obvious questions such as how did the population grow? And if Adam and Eve's children were siblings, wouldn't that constitute incest? Why is incest dangerous? Sex between blood relatives is dangerous primarily because it dramatically increases the risk of severe genetic disorders in offspring. Most people carry hidden harmful mutations known as recessive genes. These harmful mutations developed over millennia and continue to the present. But these recessive genes weren't present at the start of our time on Earth. Adam and Eve were created perfectly, and their children were also close to perfection, so their mutations had not had time to develop to the point of harming their offspring. Now, I would like to show another selfish emotion passed down to us, namely jealousy. Of course, science has a slightly different view from the Bible. Science explains jealousy as an ancient inherited survival mechanism designed to protect valuable relationships and social standing. It is a complex blend of fear, anger, and sadness hardwired into our biology over millions of years of human evolution. I agree that jealousy is ancient, but according to the Bible, the next emotion to be expressed that led to murder didn't take millions of years to develop. Now to the biblical account of Cain and Abel, Genesis 4 1 through 8. Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruit of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, Let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. The brothers were adults when this murder occurred, which means the earth had already begun to be populated by other siblings. For context, I researched the question, starting with two people, what would Earth's population be by the time the flood occurred approximately 1,656 years later? Starting with only two people, the population size 1,656 years later entirely depends on the assumption annual growth rate. Estimates range from several million to billions as the math is incredibly sensitive to the variables used for lifespans, family size, and generational lengths. I only wanted to show that when the murder occurred, there were a lot of people on the earth. The number doesn't matter. You may be wondering what was wrong with Cain's offering compared with Abel's. The answer is in the first part of verse 4. Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. What's the difference? Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. Abel's offering was the best of what he had to give to God. Cain kept the best for himself and offered God the second best from what he had, because it doesn't say the first fruits. Cain became jealous of God's favor toward Abel because he offered the best of what he had to God. So, out of jealousy, he murdered his brother. What happened when Abel died will help dispel more false Christian teachings, namely, the belief in life after death and in hellfire. I'll read Genesis 4:10 to see what God said to Cain about the murder of his brother. The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." Do you remember what punishment Adam was told by God for his disobedience found in Genesis 3:19? You will eat bread by the sweat of your brow until you return to the ground, since you were taken from it, for you are dust, and you will return to dust. Christianity teaches that when you die, you either go to heaven to live in paradise or to hell to be tormented forever, and the body returns to dust. These two scriptures from the beginning of human history prove that Christianity's teaching on heaven and hell are false. I'll start with what God told Abel after he died. Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Abel was a good man who found favor with God. Why doesn't God tell Cain, your brother whom you murdered is standing beside me, if a good person's spirit goes to heaven upon death? But God said Abel's blood was crying out from the ground. That means the life force God had loaned to Abel had returned to God. How do I know that? Because of what Jesus said in Matthew 10:29. When birds are sold, two small birds cost only a penny, but not even one of the little birds can die without your Father's knowing it. How can that be? Because the life force is the Spirit of God within every living thing. And when that soul dies, God's life-giving Spirit returns to him according to what God told Cain. I want to show you how Christianity manipulates scriptures to teach what it wants using two examples from BibleGateway.com. Ezekiel 18:4, taken from a MPC Bible. Behold, all souls are mine, as the soul of the Father, so also the soul of the Son is mine. The soul that sins, it shall die. Ezekiel 18:4, taken from CSB Bible. Look, every life belongs to me. The life of the Father is like the life of the Son. Both belong to me. The person who sins is the one who will die. Christianity says that when a good person dies, their soul goes to be with God in paradise. These scriptures explain that a person's soul is the life force God lends us, and when we die, God says the spirit or life force returns to him. Jesus explained that God knows each individual in whom his life force is present, as shown when God knew the birds had died, indicating that the Spirit of God also carries information about the life it belonged to, as in the case of Abel's death. God said all life belongs to him. So, what happens when we die? We return to dust, as God stated to Adam. And what of the soul that Christianity says goes to heaven or to hell? Christianity claims to be an extension of the teachings of God given to the nation of Israel. That would mean the teaching of the soul should be the same. But is it? In ancient Hebrew, soul is primarily translated as nephesh. Unlike the Greek concept of an immortal, immaterial ghost trapped inside a physical body, the Hebrew concept of the soul describes the whole person as a living, breathing being. As you can see, Christianity, as it has in many cases, has chosen to use Greek concepts rather than God's teachings. What about hell? What was the original word for hell in Hebrew? Sheol is a biblical Hebrew term for the abode of the dead, or the underworld. In ancient Israelite worldview, it was generally conceived as a dark, subterranean pit where departed souls go and exist in a shadowy, inactive state. That describes the common grave of all mankind, good or bad. So, where did the concept of hell as a place of torment originate? The belief in the place of torment originated in the ancient Mediterranean. It evolved from early Mesopotamian and Greek underworld concepts, which were later combined with Jewish apocalyptic ideas during the Second Temple period, and eventually shaped into familiarized Christian doctrines by early theologians. Once again, Christianity is promoting a false teaching that did not originate from God. The Bible will expose more false teachings as we move forward.